Get on the ground, now! Drop whatever's in your hands!
Officer, this is my backyard. You crossed the locked gate. You are trespassing.
We're in hot pursuit. You fit the description.
Hot pursuit means you were chasing someone. You're not out of breath.
I'm asserting my Fourth Amendment rights.
Last warning.
On the ground or you're going to jail.
The screaming wasn't coming from a television set or a movie theater. It was coming from the edge of a manicured rose garden in a quiet, affluent suburb of Atlanta. And the man being screamed at wasn't a suspect fleeing a crime scene. He was standing next to his Weber grill, holding a pair of stainless steel tongs, preparing to flip 3 ribeye steaks. Before we get into the details of this infuriating violation of civil liberties, I need you to understand something about the sanctity of a man's home. The law calls it curtilage, the area immediately surrounding a dwelling that counts as part of the home itself for legal privacy protections. But for Marcus Thorne, it wasn't just a legal term. It was his sanctuary. It was the piece of American soil he had defended for 30 years in uniform, and the place where he intended to enjoy his retirement in peace. Marcus Thorne was 58 years old, a retired Marine colonel, and currently a senior consultant for a major defense logistics firm. He was 6'2", with the posture of a man who had spent decades leading battalions. He was wearing a polo shirt tucked into khaki shorts and deck shoes. He was the picture of a law-abiding citizen enjoying a Saturday afternoon. The intruder disturbing this peace was Officer Kyle Branning. Branning was 29 years old with 3 years on the force and a reputation in the precinct for being proactive, a code word often used for officers who viewed the Constitution as a suggestion rather than a rule book. Branning had not knocked on the front door. He had not rung the doorbell. He had unlatched the side gate, ignored the clearly posted "No Trespassing" sign, and walked directly into the backyard with his hand resting on his service weapon. Marcus didn't flinch. He didn't drop the tongs. He didn't raise his hands in surrender. He simply turned his head, looked at the young officer with a gaze that had withered junior lieutenants for decades, and spoke in a voice that was calm, deep, and utterly devoid of fear. "Officer, you are trespassing on private property," Marcus said. "You have crossed a closed gate into the curtilage of my home. You need to turn around and leave immediately." Branning wasn't used to this reaction. He was used to fear. He was used to people scrambling to comply, desperate to prove their innocence. He wasn't used to a black man in a backyard looking at him like he was a nuisance rather than an authority figure. "I said get on the ground," Branning shouted again, stepping off the paved walkway and onto the grass. "We have a report of a suspect fleeing through backyards in this neighborhood. You fit the description." "What description?" Marcus asked, his voice steady. "A black man in a backyard. I live here. This is my house, and you have not articulated an emergency that justifies a warrantless entry." "I don't need a warrant if I'm in hot pursuit," Branning retorted, closing the distance. He was now within 10 feet of Marcus. "Hot pursuit requires a continuous chase of a specific suspect." Marcus corrected him, reciting the legal standard as if he were reading from a textbook. "If you were in hot pursuit, you would be running, not walking. You would be winded. You are clearly conducting a canvas search without probable cause. Now, for the last time, get off my lawn." Branning's face flushed red. The command presence he had been taught to project was bouncing harmlessly off Marcus Thorne's chest. The officer felt his authority slipping away, and instead of de-escalating, instead of realizing he might have made a mistake, he decided to force the issue. He unsnapped the retention strap on his holster. "Sir, you are obstructing an investigation. If you don't lower those tongs and get on the ground, I will arrest you for obstruction." Marcus turned his body fully toward the officer. He placed the tongs slowly on the side table of the grill. He held his hands out to his sides, palms open, empty. "My hands are empty, officer," Marcus said loud enough for the neighbors to hear. "I am not resisting. I am not obstructing. I am asserting my Fourth Amendment rights. You are making a decision right now that is going to cost this city a great deal of money. Are you sure you want to proceed?" The silence that followed Marcus's question was heavy, broken only by the distant hum of a lawnmower and the sizzling of the steaks on the grill behind him. Officer Branning hesitated for a fraction of a second. In that brief moment, he could have salvaged his career. He could have looked at the well-maintained house, the expensive grill, the calm demeanor of the man standing before him, and realized that this was not a fleeing felon. But Branning was driven by an ego that couldn't handle being corrected, especially not by a black man old enough to be his father. The dynamic had shifted from a police investigation to a contest of wills. "I'm not playing games with you," Branning sneered, taking another step forward. "We have a report of a burglary suspect, black male, blue shirt. You're wearing a blue shirt. I'm wearing a navy blue Ralph Lauren polo," Marcus replied, his voice dropping an octave, becoming even more authoritative. "And I'm standing next to a grill in my own backyard. Did the report say the suspect stopped to cook lunch?" By now, the commotion had drawn attention. Over the privacy fence to the left, a neighbor, Mrs. Gable, a woman in her early 60s, peered over. She held her gardening shears in one hand and her smartphone in the other. She hit record. "Officer," Mrs. Gable called out. "That is Colonel Thorne. He's lived here for 12 years. "What in the world are you doing?" Branning glanced at the neighbor, startled. "Ma'am, step back. This is an active police scene." "It's a backyard barbecue, you idiot," Mrs. Gable muttered, but she kept the camera steady. Marcus didn't look away from Branning. "You have a witness now, officer. You have no warrant. You have no consent to be here. You have no exigent circumstances. If you take one step closer to me or my home, you are violating clearly established federal law, United States versus Santana, Florida versus Jardines. Do you know those cases, officer? Because I do." Branning's hand twitched near his taser. He was losing control of the situation, and his training, or perhaps his lack of proper temperament, told him that the only way to regain control was through physical dominance. "I'm going to check that shed," Branning announced, pointing his free hand toward the detached structure in the corner of the yard. "And I'm going to check that garage." "You will do no such thing," Marcus said. "I am explicitly denying you consent to search my property. If you enter those structures, you are breaking the law." "I don't need your consent." Branning lied, or perhaps he truly believed his own fabrication. "I'm clearing the area for officer safety." "Officer safety does not trump the Constitution," Marcus said. "You cannot create the emergency that justifies the intrusion. You came in here. You created the confrontation. You are the aggressor." Branning had heard enough. He felt small and he hated it. He lunged forward not to arrest Marcus yet, but to bypass him. He wanted to prove that he could go where he wanted, that his badge gave him the master key to every lock in the city. He shouldered past Marcus, his tactical vest scraping against Marcus's arm. Marcus didn't push back. He didn't flinch. He took a single step to the side to maintain his balance, then turned to face the neighbor's camera. "Mrs. Gable, please note the time," Marcus said clearly. "It is 2:14 p.m. Officer, what is your badge number?" He looked at the silver medal on Branning's chest. "Officer Branning badge 492 has just physically assaulted a homeowner to conduct an illegal search of a private residence. I have offered no resistance. I have made no threats." Branning was marching toward the garden shed, now his boots stomping through Mrs. Thorne's prize-winning petunias. He reached the shed door, which was secured with a simple latch. He didn't check to see if it was locked. He kicked the door near the handle. The wood splintered. The door swung open, banging against the side of the shed. Branning drew his taser and shined the laser pointer into the dark interior of the shed, screaming, "Police, come out!" There was nothing inside but a riding lawnmower, bags of mulch, and a set of golf clubs. Marcus watched the destruction of his property with a cold, simmering rage. He wasn't worried about the door. He could fix the door. He was worried about the fact that a man with a gun and a God complex was tearing through his life without a shred of legal justification. and he knew with the certainty of a man who had seen combat that this wasn't over. Branning wasn't going to find a suspect, which meant Branning was going to need a scapegoat. Officer Branning emerged from the shed, frustration evident in his body language. The shed was empty. There was no burglar. There was no suspect hiding behind the lawnmower. The adrenaline that had propelled him through the gate was beginning to sour into anxiety, but he pushed it down. He couldn't be wrong. Not with the neighbor filming, not with the homeowner watching him like a disappointed drill sergeant. He turned his attention to the detached garage. It was a large two-car structure with a side door. "Open the garage," Branning commanded, walking back toward Marcus. "I will not," Marcus replied. "I do not consent to this search." "I can kick that door in too," Branning threatened, wiping sweat from his forehead. The afternoon sun was beating down, and the heat was rising in more ways than one. "And you will add destruction of property to your list of felonies," Marcus said. "That is a custom mahogany door. It costs more than your annual salary." Branning didn't kick the door. Instead, he tried the handle. It was unlocked. He threw the door open and stormed inside. The garage was pristine. The floors were epoxy-coated. Along the walls, tools were hung with surgical precision. In the center of the bay sat a 1969 Chevrolet Camaro, fully restored, gleaming in midnight blue. It was Marcus's pride and joy, a project he had spent 5 years completing. Branning moved through the garage, overturning a stack of plastic bins near the wall. He looked under the car. He opened a storage locker and slammed it shut. He was desperate to find something, anything that would justify his presence. A stolen bicycle, a pile of electronics, a bag of drugs. There was nothing, just the immaculate possessions of a successful, organized man. Outside, the audience was growing. Another neighbor, Mr. Henderson, had come out to his back porch. He was a retired attorney. "Officer," Henderson shouted from 2 yards away, "you are way out of bounds. That is a warrantless search of a curtilage structure. You need to exit that garage immediately." Branning came out of the garage looking like a cornered animal. He had found nothing. He had destroyed a shed door. He had 2 witnesses recording him and shouting legal precedents. And standing in the middle of the yard, calm as a statue, was Marcus Thorne. Branning marched up to Marcus. He was breathing hard. He needed to regain control. He needed to win. "You're under arrest," Branning spat out. Marcus raised an eyebrow. "For what crime?" "Obstruction of justice," Branning said, grabbing his handcuffs. "And disorderly conduct." "Asserting my rights is not obstruction," Marcus said, his voice level. "And I have been the only orderly person here. You are arresting me because your ego is bruised and you didn't find the imaginary suspect you were looking for." "Turn around," Branning shouted, grabbing Marcus by the shoulder and spinning him around. Marcus didn't fight. He knew that any physical resistance, even a tensed muscle, would be used to justify a beatdown. He allowed himself to be turned. He brought his hands together behind his back. The back door of the main house opened. Dr. Elena Thorne stepped out. She was 55 years old, a pediatrician wearing scrubs and holding a glass of iced tea. She saw her husband of 30 years being handcuffed by a sweating, frantic police officer. She didn't drop the tea. She didn't scream. She set the glass down on the patio table, pulled her phone from her pocket, and walked toward them. "Officer," she said, her voice cutting through the air like a scalpel. "I am Dr. Elena Thorne. I am recording this. You are arresting my husband, Colonel Marcus Thorne. You have exactly 5 seconds to tell me why before I call the chief of police, who happens to be a patient of mine." Branning faltered as he clicked the cuffs shut. He obstructed my investigation, ma'am. He refused to cooperate." "Refusal to cooperate is not a crime," Elena said, zooming in on the officer's nameplate. "You are making a mistake that is going to end your career. Look at him. He is compliant. You are the one who is shaking." "I'm taking him in," Branning said, shoving Marcus forward. Let's go. Elena, Marcus said over his shoulder. Call the lawyer, save the footage from the security cameras. Do not let him back in the yard without a warrant. I've got it, Marcus, she said. Don't say a word to him. I know the drill, Marcus said. Branning marched Marcus Thorne out of his own backyard through the broken gate and toward the squad car parked haphazardly in the middle of the street. Neighbors were now lining the sidewalk, phones raised, shaking their heads. It was a neighborhood spectacle, but not the kind Branning had wanted. He had wanted to be the hero catching the bad guy. Instead, he looked like a bully dragging a pillar of the community away in chains. The walk to the patrol car was a masterclass in dignity versus desperation. Marcus walked with his head high, his stride measured despite the handcuffs biting into his wrists. He nodded once to Mr. Henderson, the retired attorney who gave a grim thumbs up, signaling that legal help was already being summoned. Officer Branning, on the other hand, was practically vibrating with nervous energy. He gripped Marcus's arm tighter than necessary, his eyes darting between the neighbors filming on the sidewalk. He knew deep down in the pit of his stomach that this had gone sideways. But the sunk cost fallacy was hammering in his brain. If he just booked the guy, if he just wrote the report creatively enough, maybe he could make the charges stick. Maybe he could justify the search. He shoved Marcus against the side of the cruiser. Spread your legs, Branning commanded, patting him down for weapons. I have a pocket knife in my right front pocket, Marcus stated neutrally, and my wallet in the back left. Branning fished out the wallet. He flipped it open. The military ID was right there next to the driver's license. Colonel USMC Rhett. Branning stared at it for a second. The realization that he had just arrested a high-ranking military officer started to sink in, but he shoved the wallet into his own pocket. Get in, Branning said, opening the back door and guiding Marcus's head down. The interior of the patrol car smelled of stale sweat and industrial disinfectant. The hard plastic seat was uncomfortable, designed to be inhospitable. Marcus slid in and sat upright. He didn't lean back. He didn't slump. He waited. Branning got into the driver's seat. He didn't start the car immediately. He sat there gripping the steering wheel, looking at himself in the rearview mirror. He needed to compose his narrative. He picked up the radio. Dispatch 4 Lincoln 20, 1 in custody, transporting to Central. Copy 4 Lincoln 20. What are the charges? The dispatcher asked. Branning hesitated. Obstruction, resisting, disorderly. Copy. Branning started the engine and pulled away from the curb. The drive to the station was agonizingly quiet. Usually arrestees bargained. They begged. They threatened. They yelled. Marcus Thorne did none of that. He sat in perfect silence. He stared at the back of Branning's head, his expression unreadable in the rearview mirror. You shouldn't have interfered, Branning said after 5 minutes, unable to handle the silence. If you just let me look in the shed, none of this would have happened. Marcus said nothing. I'm just doing my job. Branning continued, his voice rising slightly. We have reports of break-ins. I can't just let people hide suspects. Marcus remained silent. He knew his rights. He knew that anything he said would be twisted in the police report. Officer attempted to engage suspect in conversation. Suspect was belligerent. Silence was the only weapon he needed right now. You think because you were in the military you're special? Branning asked, glancing back. Laws apply to everyone. Marcus closed his eyes for a moment, took a deep breath, and reopened them. He focused on a spot on the partition. He was meditating on the Fourth Amendment. He was composing the opening statement of his lawsuit in his head. They arrived at the precinct. Branning drove into the sally port, the heavy garage door rattling shut behind them. He pulled Marcus out of the car and walked him to the booking area. This was where the power dynamic shifted permanently. The desk sergeant was Sergeant Miller, a 50-year-old black man who had been on the force for 25 years. He was reviewing paperwork when Branning walked in with Marcus. Miller looked up. His eyes went wide. He stood up slowly. Colonel Thorne. Miller asked, his voice confused. Marcus looked at the sergeant. "Hello, Sergeant Miller. How is your son doing at West Point?" He's doing great, sir. Made the dean's list," Miller stammered. He looked at the handcuffs on Marcus's wrists. He looked at Officer Branning. "Branning, why is Colonel Thorne in cuffs?" He obstructed my investigation," Branning said. "Refused to let me search his property. Caused a scene." Sergeant Miller walked around the desk. He didn't look at Branning. He looked at Marcus. "Sir, did you physically resist?" "I did not," Marcus said. "I stood in my yard. Officer Branning entered through a closed gate without a warrant, searched my shed and garage against my will, and arrested me when I asked for his badge number." Miller turned his gaze to Branning. It was a look of pure disappointment and impending doom. "You went into his backyard without a warrant." "I was in hot pursuit," Branning said, his voice cracking. "I had a report." "A report of what?" Miller asked. "A runner. Did you see the runner enter the colonel's yard?" I thought he might have." "You thought," Miller repeated. He looked at the booking computer. "Uncuff him, now." "But, Sarge, I have to process—" "I said, uncuff him," Miller barked. The sound echoed off the concrete walls. "And then give me your body camera, immediately." Officer Branning's hands shook as he reached for his keyring. The confidence that had carried him through the backyard raid had completely evaporated, replaced by a cold, creeping dread. The authority in Sergeant Miller's voice wasn't just rank. It was the sound of a man who knew exactly how badly things had been messed up. Branning unlocked the handcuffs. The metal clicked and Marcus brought his arms forward, rubbing his wrists where the steel had dug in. He didn't complain. He didn't rub it in. He simply adjusted his cuffs and looked at Sergeant Miller. "Thank you, Sergeant," Marcus said calmly. "Sir, I apologize," Miller said, looking pained. "You can have a seat in the waiting area while we sort this out." "I prefer to stand," Marcus replied. "And I would like to ensure that the footage from Officer Branning's camera is preserved immediately. I want the audit log to show that it was uploaded and not tampered with." "It's being pulled right now," Miller said. He held out his hand to Branning. "Camera, now." Branning unclipped the device from his chest and handed it over. He looked like a child caught stealing from the collection plate. "Go to the break room," Miller ordered Branning. "Do not speak to anyone. Do not write your report yet. Wait for the watch commander." Branning slunk away, disappearing down the hallway. Miller turned back to Marcus. "Colonel Captain Miller, no relation, is the watch commander today. He's upstairs. I've already buzzed him." "I know Jim," Marcus said. "We served on the Veterans Outreach Committee together." Of course they did. Branning hadn't just arrested a homeowner, he had arrested a fixture of the local civic infrastructure. Moments later, Captain James Miller, a man with graying temples and a weary expression, came through the secure doors. He saw Marcus standing by the booking desk, rubbing his wrist. He saw the stormy look on Sergeant Miller's face. "Marcus." The captain stopped looking between the men. "Please tell me this is a social call." "I wish it were Jim," Marcus said. "Your Officer Branning entered my property without a warrant, damaged my shed, searched my garage, and arrested me for asserting my Fourth Amendment rights. My wife has the entire incident on video, as do two of my neighbors." The captain closed his eyes and pinched the bridge of his nose. He let out a long, slow exhale. Okay. Sergeant, bring up the footage. We're going to watch this right now. Marcus, come into my office." They moved into the glass-walled office adjacent to the booking area. The captain sat at his desk. Marcus sat opposite him. Sergeant Miller connected the body camera to the dock and pulled up the file on the large monitor on the wall. The video began. The quality was crisp, 1080p high definition. The audio kicked in. Get on the ground. Do it now. The captain watched. He saw the pristine lawn. He saw Marcus standing by the grill. He heard the clear, articulate refusal of consent. He saw the no trespassing sign as Branning pushed past the gate. When Branning shouted, "I don't need a warrant if I'm in hot pursuit," the captain winced. He's walking, the captain muttered to himself. He's not even out of breath. There's no pursuit. The video continued. The kick to the shed door. The search of the garage. The captain's face grew darker with every second. He saw the arrogance, the escalation, the complete disregard for policy and law. Then came the arrest. You're under arrest. For what crime obstruction? The captain hit the space bar, pausing the video on the image of Marcus being spun around. He swiveled his chair to face Marcus. Marcus, I don't know what to say. This is indefensible. I know, Marcus said. That's why I'm filing a federal lawsuit on Monday morning. I'm telling you this now, Jim, because I respect you, but this officer is a danger to this community. If he did this to me, someone who knows the law, someone with resources, what is he doing to the kids in the South District? What is he doing to people who don't know the word curtilage? The captain nodded slowly. You're right. You're absolutely right. I want the booking record expunged, Marcus said. I want my belt and shoelaces back, and I want to go home to my wife. Consider it done, the captain said. We're releasing you immediately, detention only. No charges filed. And I want copies of all reports and this video, Marcus added. By tomorrow. You'll have to go through FOIA for the video officially, but I'll make sure the request is expedited. Top of the pile. Marcus stood up. Officer Branning needs to be off the street, Jim. He's done for the day, the captain said grimly. And Internal Affairs will be opening a file before the sun goes down. Marcus walked out of the office. He didn't smile. He didn't feel triumphant. He felt tired. He had spent his life defending the country, only to have to defend his own backyard from the people sworn to protect it. He collected his personal effects from the sergeant, his wallet, his keys, his pocket knife. He signed the release form. Uber is outside, Marcus said, checking his phone. We can drive you home, sir, Sergeant Miller offered. Marcus looked at the police cruisers parked outside. No, thank you, Sergeant. I think I've had enough of police cars for one day. While Marcus was in the Uber heading back to his interrupted barbecue, the atmosphere inside the precinct turned radioactive. Captain Miller walked out of his office and went straight to the break room. Officer Branning was sitting at a table staring at a vending machine. He stood up when the captain entered. Sit down, Miller said. His voice was dangerously quiet. Branning sat. I just watched the video, Miller said. In my 22 years on this job, I have never seen a more flagrant violation of the Fourth Amendment committed by one of my own officers. You walked into a fenced yard, ignored a posted sign, broke a door, and searched a garage without a warrant, without consent, and without a suspect in sight. Captain, I had a report. Stop. Miller held up a hand. I listened to the dispatch tapes, too. The call was for a suspicious person 3 streets over. You were on a fishing expedition, and when you got caught, instead of apologizing, you arrested a retired Marine colonel. Branning paled. He was a colonel. Does it matter? Miller leaned in, placing his hands on the table. Does it matter if he was a colonel or a fry cook? He was a citizen on his own property. You violated his civil rights. You violated department policy. You violated the law. I thought he was hiding something. He was too calm. He was calm because he knew you were wrong, Miller said. He was giving you a chance to walk away, and you were too arrogant to take it. You are on administrative leave effective immediately. Hand over your badge and gun. Branning's hands shook violently as he unholstered his weapon and placed it on the table. He unpinned his badge. Am I getting fired? That's up to the chief and the city manager, Miller said, collecting the items. But if I were you, I'd start looking for a new line of work. And you better pray the lawsuit doesn't name you personally, or you'll be paying for that shed door for the rest of your life. Back at the Thorne residence, the scene had calmed, but the tension remained. Dr. Elena Thorne was sitting on the patio reviewing the footage on her phone. When Marcus walked through the gate, the one Branning had left unlatched, she stood up and hugged him. "Are you okay?" she asked. "I'm fine," Marcus said, kissing her forehead. "Just angry." "I sent the video to David," she said. David was their family attorney, a shark in a tailored suit who specialized in civil rights litigation. "Good," Marcus said. He walked over to the grill. The steaks were ruined cold and gray on the grates. He stared at them for a moment, then closed the lid. "We're ordering pizza tonight." "David said the city attorney is going to have a heart attack when they see this," Elena said. "They should," Marcus replied. "They hired him. They trained him. They put him on the street with a badge and a gun and no understanding of the law." The next morning, Sunday, the story began to ripple out. Marcus hadn't gone to the media yet, but the neighbors had. Mrs. Gable's video was on Nextdoor. Mr. Henderson's video was on Facebook. By noon, the local news station had picked it up. Monday morning arrived with the force of a hurricane. The lawsuit, Thorne v. City of Atlanta et al., was filed at 9:00 a.m. sharp. It was a blistering document. It accused the city of failing to train its officers, and it accused Officer Branning of unlawful search and seizure, false arrest, and assault. But the real damage was done in the court of public opinion. By Tuesday, the Bodycam footage released quickly by the department in an attempt to show transparency was everywhere. It was on CNN. It was on Fox News. It was on every legal blog in the country. The commentary was brutal. "Watch this officer treat a private backyard like a public park," one anchor said. "This is what happens when police don't respect boundaries," a legal analyst explained on a morning show. "The law is clear. The home is the castle. You cannot just waltz in because you feel like it." This officer had nothing. No warrant, no probable cause, just a hunch and an attitude. The internet sleuths went to work. They found Branning's previous records. Minor complaints mostly dismissed. Disrespectful tone. Aggressive stops. It was a pattern of behavior that had been ignored because the victims hadn't been retired colonels with pristine records. In the city attorney's office, the mood was funeral. Sarah Jenkins, the lead attorney for the city, sat at a conference table with the chief of police and the city manager. The Bodycam footage was paused on the screen. "We can't fight this," Jenkins said flatly. "There is no defense. He wasn't in hot pursuit. The curtilage violation is textbook. If we go to trial, a jury will destroy us. They will see that man, that beautiful house, that calm demeanor, and they will give him whatever number he asks for." "Branning says he felt threatened," the chief offered weakly. "By what?" Jenkins snapped. "By the barbecue tongs, by the man standing still. The video shows the officer advancing, the officer escalating, the officer initiating physical contact. It's a loser, chief, a total loser." "What's the damage?" the city manager asked, rubbing his temples. "Thorne's lawyer is asking for $750,000 in policy changes," Jenkins said. "And honestly, that's cheap. If we get a jury that hates government overreach, we could be looking at millions in punitive damages." "Settle it," the city manager said. "Get it done fast, before the national news cycles start doing deep dives into our hiring practices." "And Branning?" the chief asked. "He has to go," the city manager said. "Terminate him for cause, gross misconduct, violating constitutional rights. Make it clear he went rogue." The negotiations took 3 weeks. The city wanted a confidentiality agreement. Marcus refused. He wanted the settlement public. He wanted the admission of wrongdoing on the record. "I don't need their money to be quiet," Marcus told his lawyer. "I want them to pay so they remember. Silence is free. Justice costs." In the end, the city folded. They agreed to a settlement of $480,000. They agreed to a public statement acknowledging that Officer Branning had violated department policy and the Fourth Amendment. And they agreed to implement a new training module specifically on curtilage and warrantless entries, which would be mandatory for all officers. Kyle Branning was fired 2 days before the settlement was signed. The union declined to fight for his job. The video was too damning. He was unhireable in law enforcement. 6 months after the incident, Marcus and Elena stood in their backyard. The gate had been repaired. The shed door was fixed. The rose garden was in full bloom. "The check cleared," Elena said, holding up an email on her tablet. "Good," Marcus said. He was cleaning the grill. "What do you want to do with it, Hawaii, a new boat?" "No," Marcus said. "I've been thinking about that legal defense fund, the one for the folks on the other side of town, the ones Branning harassed before he got to me." "The Liberty Defense Fund. That's the one," Marcus said. "Send them half. Keep enough to cover David's fees and maybe a nice dinner. But the rest, let's help the people who can't stand up for themselves." Elena smiled. "I love you, Marcus." "I love you too." Marcus looked at the fence line. He looked at the spot where Branning had stood demanding submission. He felt a sense of peace not because the money was in the bank, but because the boundary had been restored. The line had been drawn. He lit the grill. It was time to finally cook those steaks. Conclusion. The sanctity of a home is one of the oldest and most sacred rights we possess. It is the one place where the government cannot go without a very good reason. Marcus Thorne's story is a reminder that these rights are not self-enforcing. They require knowledge, courage, and sometimes the willingness to stand firm in the face of intimidation. Marcus was lucky. He had the training to remain calm, the resources to fight back, and the witnesses to prove his innocence. But how many others have their privacy invaded and their lives disrupted because they don't know the magic words to say or don't have a camera rolling? This settlement wasn't just a payday. It was a warning shot to every officer who thinks a badge is a license to trespass. It was a victory for the Fourth Amendment. What would you have done if an officer walked into your backyard like that? Would you have known your rights well enough to stand your ground? Let me know in the comments below. And if you believe in holding authority accountable, hit that like button and subscribe for more stories of justice served. Stay safe and know your rights.